Hey everybody, welcome back to Terry's Tribe. I appreciate you tuning in. I'm your host, Terry Wells Brown, the author of Women of Wine Country, with my fifth book coming out in just 2 short weeks, Grief and Greed. So stay tuned for that. And one last call, you can go get Babies and Badass for free if you go onto my Facebook page, T Wells Brown. And after this week, it'll be down. There'll be no longer for free, so go grab it. I'm super happy to introduce my next guest. I have an actual personal fondness for this man. He's a very prolific author, and when I first started my journey, I was so very fortunate to meet him. He is the author of 12 books, right, Harlan?
Something like that.
Yeah, 12. I counted 12. So it's Harlan Hague. He is a prize-winning historian and an award-winning author. And we've been trying to get him on the show for a while now, but he's like most authors and busy writing and, doing all the things. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Terry. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So the first thing I like to ask everybody is, what's your next project?
The project I'm working on right now is one I've been trying to push for some time. My wife wrote a number of letters when we were living in England in 1971-72. We were living on a working farm, and she wrote back to her mother almost every day. I've been trying to get her to let me publish these letters for years and years. She finally gave me the go-ahead. So I think this is something that could be popular both in the United States and in Britain. It's fun, it's touching, it's moving, it's deep nostalgic.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do you have a title in mind yet, or are you still working on?
Letters from Durham's Farm.
Oh.
We lived on a working farm in a 18th century stone farmhouse. So this is Letters from Durham's Farm.
That's going to be great. We'll all keep a watch for it for sure. My mother-in-law fell in love with your book. She was actually very familiar with you even before she came out here to live with us. And of course, she just didn't know. So she was so excited before the COVID when we had the writing group meeting that she got to meet you in person. So she was ecstatic. And
yes, I remember. I'll be sure she gets an early copy.
Oh, that'd be great. Oh, she would be beside herself. So those of you who don't know, Harlan actually is part of my local writing group that we actually were before COVID, meeting in person. So it's been a great journey. Now, it says here in your bio that you have been to 80 countries. Is that right?
80 countries and dependencies, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Well, there used to be a screenwriter. I'm sorry, there used to be a travel writer as well. I published in newspapers all over the country.
Wow, and so that took you all over the world.
Yes.
Wow.
I do have an ebook titled Soft Adventure Travel that collects many of my articles.
Wow, that's incredible. So the 2 countries that you know that you've lived in besides America is England and Japan.
Right.
Wow, that's so. Where was your favorite, excluding America, England, and Japan? What was your favorite country?
Well, I consider England to be sort of a second home. We've been there so many times, and we lived there for over a year during a sabbatical. It was a great year, and we go back as often as we can. COVID has slowed us down just a bit.
Yeah. So England then is your favorite place next to America.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. It's awesome that your favorite place is someplace that you get to go to often, pre and post COVID, right?
Yes, yeah.
So let's dive in here. You said that you don't generally call your books Westerns. Why is that?
My books are actually touted as Westerns, in fact, Western romance. Mm-hmm. And I'm reluctant to call them Western or romance because anytime you tell someone you write a Western, they're expecting full of violence, high body count. And my books are not that. My books are thoughtful, I think. And They are romances, but they're not the bodice ripper type romance that Harlequin does. They're sweet love stories. So I like to think that my books are simply dramas set in the West, mostly in the 19th century.
So what genre then is that's a drama is your genre that you would consider?
Well, it probably would be selected by others as a Western. In fact, the prizes that my books have won, they've won as Westerns. So I'll take it. I'll, I'll buy it.
Any prize is a good prize, right?
Any prize is a good prize, good publicity and good for the soul.
Yeah. So now,
Helps sales too.
yeah, no kidding. Absolutely. Awards are always great. The little emblem on the front cover of your book is such a big deal.
Right.
It catches anybody's attention for sure.
Yep.
So you've written two books that are set largely in Japan. So these would not be considered your Westerns. Is that correct?
Right. That's right.
Are these based on research or personal experience?
One of the books called Sakura, people who talk about it are constantly asking me if it's autobiographical. But I have to tell them that no, because the book is about a mixed blood Japanese coming to the United States, studying here, and finally telling the professor that the professor is his father. So even though I lived in Japan and worked in Japan, I tell anyone who asks that I don't have any children in Japan to speak of.
That's great.
Mostly based on research. The book Butterfly's Child was based somewhat on research. It's a sequel of a sort to Puccini's Madame Butterfly. And so one doesn't have to know Madame Butterfly to understand the book, but it helps.
Yeah, I bet it's a nice addition then. If somebody loves Madame Butterfly, that would be a great marketing.
It is, because it tells the story of what happened to Cho-Cho-san's child. And I think that's the real tragedy of Madame Butterfly, not what happened to Butterfly, who committed suicide, except in my book, she didn't. It's what the tragedy is what happened to the child. So I tell that story.
That's great. And I have to say, some of your books have rewritten history. So you're a historian that enjoys the mighty pen that allows you to rewrite history.
Yeah. Well, that you asked me earlier what I call my books. Frankly, I think they're more appropriately called historical fiction, because they are based on history.
Except for one. Well, I guess it is based on history, and I don't want to give too much away, but the ending is different. Like how the West was one kind of thing was switched, right?
I do take some liberties with my history. I do write some creative history, and you're quite right. I change the facts sometimes.
In ridiculous ways.
Yeah, 2 or 3 of my books are the sort of book that ends with, "This is the way it should have been."
That's great. I would encourage anybody to go read any of his books. They're going to be very well written and very entertaining. But some of the fun is the way that he's taken his creativity, and only a historian can do it really well, right? So you change the way you had things turn out the way you thought that might have been better, and you did it in a manner where it was intriguing.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Yeah. Well, you're winning awards, so it's working. Keep doing it.
For example, one book that's noted for this is the way it should have been. No, I'm sorry. One that's noted for changing the outcome. There's a little book titled "If the South Had Won the Civil War," based on speculation, but also based on history. If only 2 or 3 things had been different, the South could have won the war. Well, one of my books, 2 or 3 of my books actually, do have this sort of speculation built in. It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun. It's good. I like it. That's what writing's all about. And it's
I had a historian read one of my books, give me a beta read, And oh, she was outraged
She
because
was.
she didn't like the way I had changed some of the facts to suit the story. And she didn't like the way I changed a little bit of the geography to fit the story. But I told her, I'm making it all up. I'm a novelist. I can do that. Well, I don't make it all up. It's based pretty well on history, but I do use a little license occasionally.
Yeah. Well, good for you though. That's what writing is all about. I mean, remember the one police writer who came in and said, keep making stuff up because it's way more interesting than real police procedures.
Yeah, yeah,
That's why we're writing fiction.
here, here.
So you put an emphasis on scene setting in
Yes,
your book.
I think it's very important. Some people say that scene setting is important in movies, but not so much in books. I don't agree with that. I think that the reader, I think a book, a narrative should be very visual. And I think that the reader should see exactly what the characters see. And I have a little technique, it's kind of corny, but I put myself in the scene with the characters. If they're riding horseback, I'm riding behind them. If they're seated on a wagon seat, I'm sitting in the wagon bed. I see exactly what they see and I record it. I listen to their conversation and I record it. A little corny, but it works for me. If we're in a room, I'm leaning against the wall, watching my two characters doing whatever they're doing, talking, arguing, making love, and I record it. I see what they see, and I hope the reader sees what they see as well.
So you're very descriptive, and so that allows the reader to put themselves in the actual room, like you're saying.
Yes, I hope so.
Now, are you big on, they have several rules and writers argue about this all the time in the show, don't tell, or tell, don't show. How do you feel about that? Where do you fall?
I think it's very important that you show, don't tell. That's very important. uh, and I try to do that. I thought you were going to say something about how do you feel about certain writing techniques like adjectives, adverbs, and dangling participles. And that doesn't bother me. I can go, anyone who says that you should eliminate all adverbs should go read some bestsellers. Most of the bestsellers have beautiful adverbs, beautiful adjectives, and it doesn't bother me. I'll listen to the gurus as long as their opinion agrees with mine, and but I don't always follow their lead.
No, and I've noticed I use Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid on a lot of my writing, and they want to take out a lot of the adverbs. And I don't agree with it often. I think it's about 50-50 that I agree with. Okay, maybe I've overdone it a little bit. But half the time I'm like, no, now you're taking away the punch of the story, taking away the meat of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the gurus tell you how to write, go and look at some of the books the gurus have published. And then compare those books with some of the bestsellers.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You're absolutely right. And not only that, but all books should not be written exactly the same because all readers are not exactly the same and they're not all going to respond to the same.
Here. It's the reader who judges the worth of the book, not the gurus.
Exactly. So if your book is loaded with adjectives and your books are flying off the shelf and everybody's liking your books, or you have a substantial amount of readers who like the way you're writing, well, then you've got an audience and that's what you should be doing.
Here.
Yeah. So how do you like to write? First person, third person? What's your writing technique, your storytelling technique?
That's a good question. I've always written narrative fiction so that it's not first person. I've been tempted to try first person, but I haven't done it yet.
A lot of romance books are in first person.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think first person is probably more challenging than just narrative. What do you think?
I would say for me, the books that I connected with early on, when when I first realized why I was very young, why I liked a certain book was because it was written in first person, but I
Oh,
actually had read several of them. And that then realized that it was because it was written in first person. And it felt like the person was talking to me, like
mm-hmm.
a girlfriend was talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that that's why I had connected with that particular book, and then why I gravitated at the time to romances, because I was like 12. To romances is because that's primarily where you get a lot of your first person. Now, my thing is, I write in first person past tense. I've just read a book by a big author that I really like a lot, and realized one of the reasons that her books were uncomfortable for me to read is she writes in first person, but present tense. And I have to say, I think present tense is much more difficult to write than first person past tense. Because in past tense, you're telling the story like you were regurgitating a story to your girlfriend. So you can write it in that manner. But when you're writing it in present tense, you're writing it as it's unfolding right then. So your character is seeing it at the same time as your audience is seeing it. So
I
I
don't,
think
I don't see how that could work.
it,
That's almost as if you'd be carrying around a recorder with you,
exactly.
dictating into the recorder.
Yeah, and her name is Megan Marsh. She's a very good author. She probably has 37 books out. She's big in the dark romance genre, and she
Mm-hmm.
writes, at least the books that I've read, she writes first person present tense. So
Interesting.
it's been a good exercise for me to kind of look at that. It's uncomfortable for me to read it. I prefer first person past tense, and so that's how I write.
Mm-hmm.
But the last couple of books, I needed to interject a narrative perspective on things that were happening when my character wasn't going to be there, that the reader would get to see. And I felt that that was very easy to write in. So it's only been the last couple of my books that I've switched over to that narrative perspective. And it was very easy to write. I was like, wow, this is way easier than first person.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the first person, so that's what I stick with.
I'm going to try it. I've been tempted to try first person. Maybe the next book.
There you go. And I think it works for romance specifically because I write my books like I'm telling the story to my girlfriends.
Hmm.
So it's like, you would not believe what happened next is literally something I would say, because that's something I would say to one of my girlfriends.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it works in another genre. I'm working on a fantasy book right now that I'm not sure if the first person is going to work for or not. So, in fact, I think I've been primarily doing it in just a narrative view.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see. We'll see how it works.
Yep. Sounds interesting.
So, how long does it take you to write a book?
How long does it take me to write a book?
Yeah.
A
First draft.
few years ago, I was writing 2 books a year. And now it's closer to 1 book a year. For a number of reasons, I'm not able to spend as much time writing as I'd like to. But I can get 1 book in, let's say, about 8 months, 8 or 9 months.
And how long are your books? How many words are they?
Typically about 75,000. So they're a little bigger than a novella.
Yeah.
I know some publishers say you don't really have a book until you reach 90,000 words, but I don't think so. I think I can tell my story in 75,000 words.
Yeah, 70. So for my genre, it's 50,000 to 80,000 words
Mm-hmm.
is an expected genre. And I know every genre has their own, like I know fantasies are like 100,000 words, 80 to 100,000
Yeah.
words. Yeah. So
Well,
interesting.
here's my book that I just received author copies yesterday. It's my newest.
Ooh, look at that cover. That's
This
gorgeous.
this is 80,000 words, and it's about the right size for my books.
Now, is that a historical fiction as well?
Yes.
And is it
Yes.
set, where's that set?
It's set, it's a cattle drive that begins at the Rio Grande in South Texas and goes to Montana in 1875. So it is a true Western, I won't deny that. And it's really in the waning days of the cattle drive. So there's a little bit of nostalgia built in. There's also a love story
Gotta
with
have
a,
a love story.
with a twist, a love story with a twist.
Oh, good.
I won't even, I won't reveal the twist. You got to buy the book.
Yeah, there you go. Read the book and you'll see the twist. Yeah. Well, it's 2020. There has to be a twist, right?
Yep.
So, what's your favorite genre to read in?
To read in. Well, it's probably it's historical fiction, United States history, but I also like English history, British Empire, novels and history. I guess if I'm reading British Empire, it's history, but I read a lot of United States fiction, Western as well, Asian as well.
Do you have any plans of writing any British history books? Historical fiction books?
No. I wrote a screenplay based on the work by an English author. It's titled Pavon. In fact, I have even in my cup right here.
Ooh.
It's based on the premise that Queen Elizabeth was assassinated, and then we go from there. But no, I won't likely write any fiction based in Britain. I'll probably stick to the American West. It's what I know best. That was my specialty when I was writing history as well. American West.
It's smart. Stick with what you know.
Yeah, California and the West.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your screenplays that you've been writing.
Actually, I started writing screenplays before I started writing fiction. When I was going to retire from teaching, I decided that one of my histories, I could pull an interesting story. At least I thought it would be interesting from the history. The history was a history of the American Southwest, trails in the Southwest. So I started writing a novel based on a story I pulled out of that. But before I got the novel finished, I decided that this is something that Kevin Costner would really like to produce. This is when Costner was the golden boy in Hollywood. So not knowing anything about screenwriting, I sent Costner, his production company, TIG Productions, I sent them the manuscript, which you just don't do, but I didn't know that at the time. I was pretty dumb about that. So they kept it about 2 weeks, and his executive assistant wrote back to me and said, well, we don't really do anything with manuscripts, but if you'd like to send us a screenplay based on this manuscript, we'll have a look at it because Mr. Costner thinks that there might be something in it. So the next mistake I made was writing the screenplay. I knew nothing about screenplays. I read about a dozen books on how to do it, but what I should have done was to find a screenwriter that Costner knew, one who had written for him before. I could tell this guy that Kevin Costner is interested in this story and he wants to see a screenplay. How about going in with me? That's what I should have done, but I didn't have that much sense, so I didn't do it. I sent him a screenplay, and to make this very long story short, she wrote, his executive assistant called back and said, do you have an agent? And I said, no. She said, you better get one. Now, something like that would send me through the roof now into orbit, but at that time I thought, well, okay, this is the way it happens. So I got an agent, and they started talking, even to the point of talking about money. But eventually they said that there was no role in it for Costner, so they declined. And I knew that there was no role for him. Since then, my screenplays have gotten some attention and I've gotten some compliments, but nobody with deep pockets likes them as much as I do. And so the comments I have gotten often, and any of the millions of people out there who are writing screenplays have probably heard this. You get a reply saying, well, it's not exactly what we had in mind, but great story, great, well written, should be produced, but not by us.
So that's a pretty common
That's
reply.
a pretty common way of putting you down. But I've had fun with it.
So are you writing any screenplays now, or is that something that you're just not doing?
No, I'm not working on any now. I put that aside.
So, well, then that leads me into the next question, which is several of your books were published by a university press. I've never heard of a university press. Is that a textbook?
No, university presses will publish histories generally. They publish some fiction, but mostly histories. I published with University of Oklahoma Press. I published a biography. That was a prize winner. I published a history of trails in the American Southwest. Some of the best publishers are university presses.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then you had a traditional publisher as well.
A what?
A traditional publisher?
Yeah, a traditional publisher, yes. They published a few of my books until we had a parting of the ways, mostly of my choice, because this publisher, along with most commercial publishers, had a delay between submission and release of about 18 months. And now with the COVID crisis, many publishers are having to push back release dates. I have a friend who has 2 books with the same publisher that I published with, commercial publisher. One of his books will be released in 2 years.
Oh.
I decided that rather than, I ain't no spring chicken, as you can see, and I like to see my books in print. I can put a book in print about after I finish a book, I'll send it to my first-rate formatter and get my first-rate cover designer to work. And I can put a book up on Amazon within about 3 weeks after I finish the manuscript. 3 weeks. Compare that now to 18 months to 2 years.
It's incredible to think about.
Yeah. There are all sorts of advantages in self-publishing, and that is, well, some more are not only do you get it done much faster, but you have complete control. And also, if you find mistakes, or if your readers find mistakes, you can revise the manuscript, upload the corrected manuscript, and the next book sold includes that correction.
I know that's a great, powerful tool for any author to have.
Yeah. You certainly don't have the support of the publisher in promoting your book, and that can be substantial. But now most publishers, except perhaps for the New York publishers, require the author to do most of the promotion anyway.
That's what I've heard, yeah. The promotion is done by the author anyway. There's some pretty serious big players. Dean Koontz left his publisher and published with Amazon last year. Marie Force, who I don't know if you would know who she is, but she's a big romance author. She is completely indie author now, and she was started with how is it, Penguin or Pelican?
Penguin.
Sorry. I just saw a big interview with her, and she's completely all 100% indie now. She has several books that some of her previous publishers wouldn't let her out of the rights of, and those they just languish because the publishers don't put any efforts onto any backlist at all. And if you write in series, backlists are really important. So they don't put any effort at all out on backlist. It's only the next book and the next book and the next book that they put in energy out on.
Yeah, most publishers like series.
Yeah, and so that brings me to my next question for you. Are your books standalones, or or do any of them have series? I know that they somewhat follow, a couple of them somewhat follow each other, but
Exactly.
they can be standalones as well, right?
Yeah, good question. My books are standalones. Uh, there are two that have an original and a sequel, but one could read the second book, read the sequel, and there's enough reference to what happened before that you're not lost. Uh, so that they're standalones. It would be better to read the original, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, that's good. That's good because then you have a nice continuity, but yet if somebody just picked one up from the middle of your writing
Yeah.
career, they would be fine. They wouldn't be lost. What's going on?
I even had someone pick up my book, Home to Wyoming, and wrote to me and says, I really enjoyed it, and said, you told what happened before this book, before the story in this book. You ought to write a book about the before material. And I said, I have. It's titled A Place for Maylene. So, oh,
That's
so
great.
yeah.
Good for you. So the next book that you have is the letters. What's it called? Let me see
The one
here.
I'm working on now is Letters from Durham's Farm.
Yeah, letters from Durham's. Say that again. Letters from
Letters from Durham's Farm.
Durham's.
Durham's Farm was the name of the house where we lived. We lived on a working farm, and that was the name of the farm.
Letters from Durham Farm. And
Yep.
when do you think that'll be available?
Um, October, late October, probably.
Oh, so it's almost ready.
It's in the context of self-publishing. Yes, it's almost ready.
That's great because it's October 1st today.
Yeah, you're challenging me. I think it will be by the end of October, early November at the very latest.
I was supposed to have a book ready done today and it's 2 weeks late, so I get it.
That's the nature of the beast, isn't it?
It is when it's all has to come out of here and in here is so busy with stuff, right?
Oh, yes. Yep.
So when you get after you get that published, what's your next project? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I have no idea.
Is that so
I,
you finish a project and then you wait to see what the next one's going to be?
I never, I'm not one of these people that have 15 potential topics rocketing around their head. And I have friends who say they have to pick from among a dozen possible, but that's not me. When I finish a book and get it done, I go out in my backyard and sit on the bench with a cup of tea or a glass of wine, depending on the time of day, and I think. And I'm usually, after maybe just one or two sessions like that, I've got a new topic. But I don't have a new topic now. Not
You
after Durham's.
Yeah, you just want to get this one done.
Yep.
Don't blame you. I have like 52 books plotted and ready to go. So
52.
52.
Well,
I
you
the
need,
next few years, and I had some very lofty goals of getting a book a month done, and I'm at about a book every 2 months. I can get about 70,000 words done in 2 months and over to my beta readers and start the next book.
you need to be cloned.
I have a lot of stuff going on in here, and it actually helps me to get letting some of it out. So,
You're faster than I am.
well, you know what? I feel like I have a lot of time that I have to make up for. Like I lost a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's what happens.
Yes.
Well, Mister, I really appreciate you coming in and having a chat with us, Harlan.
Thank
And
you, Terry.
if anybody wants to pick up your books, they are all on Amazon, correct?
They are indeed.
Yep. And
And also there are descriptions of all my books on my website. It's harlanhague.us.
harlanhague.us. And I will put all of your links in this video on the notes for this video.
Great.
Everybody will be able to to contact you in any way. I'll have all of the links that you gave to Katie, they'll go in the description box as well as your bio.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It was beautiful, right?
I've enjoyed the discussion.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate you. And if you would like to get a hold of Harlan, you can find him on his website at harlanhague.us, or you can check him out on Facebook and go get his books. They're on Amazon. You will not be sorry. Thank you again, Harlan. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Terry. Be safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.